All right. Hello. Thank you for joining us today for a Houston area perspective on Texas education policy. I'm Trista Bishop-Watt, and I serve as the Director of Government Relations for Good Reason Houston. At Good Reason Houston, we champion a bold citywide vision that every child in every neighborhood deserves to excel in a world-class public school and thrive in the Houston of tomorrow. We do this by building awareness for, advising school districts on, and advocating for student-focused strategies backed by data to meet the needs of our children. Houston is a vibrant and unique community. We are the fourth largest city in the US, and the greater Houston area encompasses the third largest county. With over 145 languages spoken across the region, Houston is considered the most diverse metropolitan area in the country. For public schools, our city also comes with unique challenges and highly diverse student needs. In our region, 35% of students are considered emergent bilingual, 76% are economically disadvantaged, and 11% are enrolled in special education. Houston area students face academic hurdles greater than students across the state. Only 44% of our students are reading on grade level by third grade, 4 percentage points behind the state average. This only grows to 46% by eighth grade, a full 10 percentage points behind the Texas average. Notably, students of color and economically disadvantaged students face historic achievement gaps, which have persisted over time. Compounding these academic challenges, public schools also face operational barriers like a statewide teacher shortage and budgetary shortfalls exacerbated by enrollment decline in our urban core. Today, we're going to explore these issues from a public policy lens as we strive to find solutions that improve the quality of education for Houston children. We are pleased to be joined today by two of our Texas state representatives, Chairman Harold Dutton and Representative Charles Cunningham. Chairman Dutton is a native of Houston's Fifth Ward and a graduate of Phyllis Wheatley High School. He is the longest serving member on the Texas House Public Education Committee and currently chairs the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee. Representative Cunningham lives in Humble and represents the greater Houston area, including Humble, Huffman, Kingwood, and Atascosa. He serves on the House Public Education Committee and previously served on the Humble City Council and Humble ISD School Board. Thank you both for joining us today. We are eager to hear your perspectives and insight on public education in our region and Texas education policy. Without further ado, let's get into the questions and hear directly from our representatives. Houston Public Schools are tasked with meeting highly diverse student needs. Currently, our region lags behind the state average in both reading and math for most key grade levels. What do you see as the greatest challenge Houston area students face, and how is the legislature preparing to address that barrier? Chairman Dutton, I'll turn it over to you first.
Well, let me first thank you for allowing me to participate in this. I think, first of all, that the education of our children is a foundation for everything we want to do in the future. When they have no future, then I don't think our country, our democracy, our state, our local communities have a future. So I don't think there's anything, excuse me, more important than that. But let me tell you what it starts with. It starts with making sure that every child who leaves third grade can read on third grade level. Right now, what happens is there, for example, in my district, in Northeast Houston, there are 30 elementary schools. And when you look at what the average reading scores for third graders, you're probably talking somewhere around 30%. That's a tragedy. Because as we all know, from pre-K to third grade, you learn to read. After that, you read to learn. And if you never learn to read, you don't ever get to the read to learn. And finally, I will say this. For a long time, we thought children dropped out in ninth grade. But what I found out is children actually drop out in third grade. They leave in ninth grade, but they they drop out in third grade when they can't read, and they go further. They go fourth grade. Now they're achieving less, and then as they move through the system, if nothing changes for them, they just get worse. And so, thank you all for what Good Reason does, because it is absolutely critically the most important element in our future.
Well, thank you, Chairman Dutton, and we certainly agree. And we're going to delve in a little bit more to early education shortly, but I'm going to turn it over to your colleague, Representative Cunningham. What do you see as the greatest challenge Houston area students face, and how is the legislature preparing to address that barrier?
I too want to echo what Chairman Dutton said. Thank you once again for this opportunity. And to my colleague and good friend, Chairman Dutton, it's good to see you, sir. I think Chairman Dutton has actually said it. You know, we know where the critical points are in educating our children, and it starts at a young age. And we know that education is knowledge, and knowledge is power. And so we have to at least try to, make that effort to educate our children as early as we can. And it's true. He said it's third grade. At the time, some 20 years ago, I was told it was fifth grade. And so we're steadily, if we're not getting that child at that early age, then we stand the risk of having an uneducated child, an uneducated workforce, and that just it's not good for society as a whole. So I think moving forward, you said, what can the legislature do? We need to be able to partner with all parties that are concerned. I mean, with TEA, with SBAC, with the school district, parents, the teachers. I mean, we all have a stake in this, because it's not about us. It's about our future. It's about the next generation.
And I think that that's a fantastic segue. We're going to probe a little bit more into early education. And I know that you've both touched on this already, but maybe you'll have a sort of deeper perspective here. We know that early education is one of the most critical moments for children. Only a little more than half of students in the Houston area begin school kindergarten ready, and less than half are reading on grade level by third grade. Data are clear that students who are behind grade level in third grade struggle to catch up. How can the state better support our youngest learners? And I'll turn it to you, Representative Cunningham, first this time.
Well, I'd like to share with you one thing that we're doing, and once again, I am, well, I don't consider myself a rookie anymore. After coming to Austin and not going home in 5 months, but staying a whole year, I think I've moved on to become a sophomore. Right. But I would say one of the other committees that I served on was our urban affairs. And we were able to partner with businesses to create housing, affordable housing. But in addition to the housing, also be able to put daycare, early childcare, pre-K, 1, 2, 3, on the same area, if you will, of the apartments, separate from the apartments, but on that area that would allow parents to have free daycare, free pre-K. There's 3, I want to say there's at least 3 here in the Houston area. The latest one was right there on the south side. I'm trying to remember where the area was at, but off of 288. And so what we need to do is partner with all parties involved, even with your organization, Good Reason, because if we want those children to be highly educated, then we all need to kind of get together and focus on what it's going to take. And quite frankly, I've learned this from Chairman Dutton, quit fighting each other.
Well, speaking of Chairman Dutton, I know that you have a great perspective on this because one of the bills that you focused on during the regular session was to try and fix a mismatch that allow partnerships like that between school districts with pre-K to be a little bit easier. So, Chairman, how can the state better support our youngest learners?
Well, let me thank you for the question. It is a question I asked over 3 years ago. As a result of the questions we asked, my staff and I, what we did is we looked all around the country at what other states were doing insofar as making sure that every student who leaves third grade was reading on third grade level, for example. One of the best examples we found was in the state of Mississippi. We in Texas there was a time when we used to say, thank God for Mississippi, because looking at Mississippi always made Texas look better. But when it comes to education, Mississippi has done something that we had to take a real hard look at, and that is they instituted a bill that simply made it a bar to leave third grade and not be able to read on third grade level. I didn't choose to do that, but what I did in the bill during the last session, which passed the House, by the way, which almost all of my colleagues voted for in the House, but it didn't pass the Senate. What it did is it first gave us the power to diagnose children third grade reading scores, to look at that and to make a determination as to whether or not there was something impeding their progress in reading medically. For example, did they have dyslexia? One of the things we recognize is that undiagnosed dyslexia has a tendency to cause children not to be able to read. And so what I did is, in the bill that passed, we made sure that children were diagnosed so that we knew they didn't have any medical impediments. And if they did to reading, we got it addressed. It also provided that we would assess these students. And some people don't like testing, but we did diagnostic testing to determine where they are. And to the extent that they were behind, we gave them additional help through tutoring resources so that they could actually be caught up. We did that starting in first grade even, so that it became more intensive as you got to third grade, because we were trying to ensure that by third grade, when you leave third grade, we were all going to be able to stand up and say, hallelujah, every child can read. And so that's what I think the legislature has to do. One of the reasons I chose to go back to the legislature was to ensure that we get that bill passed, because that is a tribute, that will be a tribute to all of us. As I've said before in closing, we can be worried about who's coming across the border, and we should. But the greatest danger to Texas, as my colleague said, is having an uneducated workforce. Therein lies the real problem that Texas is going to face in its future if it doesn't do something about raising the level of educational achievement, particularly among its Black and Brown community.
So speaking of workforce, I'd like to talk a little bit about our teacher workforce, because we know that this is such a critical issue in education. Texas is currently experiencing a statewide teacher shortage. Houston area schools face staffing challenges with teacher turnover at an all-time high across our region. Other than base compensation, what do you see as the most critical policy the legislature can investigate over the interim to support teachers? Chairman Dutton, I'll turn this to you.
Well, when you peel away the onion about who's in the teaching profession, the first thing you have to recognize is that 75% of our teaching workforce is female. That only explains why the salaries are so low, because we've had gender pay discrimination that existed in this country forever. We're still trying to get over it. We've made a lot of progress, but it's still yet to be completely done. And it's particularly blatant in our teaching profession. I think we've got to do something about that. Secondly, when you look at the teachers who are leaving the profession, in Texas, we have two ways to become a teacher. One is you can go to the universities and go through getting a degree in teaching, or two, you can get an alternative certification. The greatest number of teachers leaving the profession were teachers who were alternatively certified. Now, what that meant to me, or at least when I looked at that, what I saw was that, well, these, in some cases, they were people who came into the profession after going into another profession. And in many cases, when that initial profession didn't work out, they bounced back to the teaching profession. Well, that's okay, but you have to expect that when things get better for them in that initial profession, or that initial profession ends up generating opportunities for them, they're probably going to leave to go to it. But I don't think at the end of the day, we ought to have a system that says that a teacher ought to be, who graduates, for example, in chemistry, ought to be more incentivized to go to work at Exxon than they do to go to teach at Atherton Elementary School or Wheatley High School, for example. And that never ought to be a matter of resources and money. And so I think the state of Texas has to step up to the plate and not only pay teachers, but give them all the tools that they need and deserve to make sure that every child who shows up at the front door of a school, we can unlock the genius in that child.
Representative Cunningham, I'd love to hear from you on this too. What do you see as the most critical policy the legislature can investigate over the interim to support teachers?
Well, we all know that teacher retention is needed with all the school districts, and I will stick to Region 4, which is probably public schools, probably about close to 50 school districts. My wife was a former teacher. She retired. But to Chairman Dutton's point, she was in the business world and then came over to education. And so I said all that to say this, that teaching is more than just a profession. It's a calling. And not everybody can be a teacher. But I think, when we're looking at the teacher retention, also in addition to having TEA and SBAC, especially SBAC, if we're trying to recruit and retain teachers, then we shouldn't be putting so much stress on the teachers, especially if they don't have the certifications. I mean, we can look at loosening that on that end. I think when we look at with TEA, they have all the data, so we know what the numbers are. We know that enrollment is down. Our teachers we need, but administrators are overstaffed. I'm going to have to catch this. I have an emergency call. When we were online, we had a hospital emergency, and I saw my wife out. So I'm gonna need to catch this for just a second. Just make sure everything's all right.
Absolutely, we totally understand that.
Yeah, all right, thank you. We'll be right back.
While Representative Cunningham is handling that, Chairman Dutton, given teacher turnover, Houston area school districts are increasingly reliant on first-year teachers. How are you thinking about strengthening the teacher preparation pipeline? And I know that you also authored a bill related to some of those Texas teacher vacancy task force issues. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, exactly, because when I took a look at other professions, for example, if you're going to be a brain surgeon in the state of Texas, you end up having to go through you don't get out of college and go right into brain surgery. You have to do a practicum of sort, so that you kind of get to know the ins and outs of it. You end up working along with people who have been in the profession sometimes, so that you learn the skills. In Texas, however, we essentially put a, a a person right out of college right into the classroom. They may not have had any sort of practical experience at all. And one of the things I did in the bill that I passed during in the House last session was we created a teacher training course so that teachers, first year teachers, didn't show up in the classroom, and that was their first time in a classroom. What I did is I said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to assign everybody, each of these teachers in their last year of schooling, we're going to assign them to a particular classroom teacher who's certified, and the state is actually going to pay them. We had it fixed in the bill so that the state would pay up to $42,000 a year to that person coming out of college so that they could gain the experience in it. I remember talking to a first year teacher, and I asked her how she was doing, and she said, "Mr. Dutton, I wish I had known that if you're a teacher, you don't wear new shoes to school because you're standing most of the time in her feet." She said, "My feet are killing me." I mean, she didn't even know, she didn't even understand that. And so there are things that we can do to help improve the teaching core by simply making sure that when they show up for the first time in a classroom, they've had an experience such that they can take that experience into that first teaching opportunity, so that the whole teaching profession benefits by virtue of them being a first year teacher, and students can benefit by them being that first year teacher.
So I'm going to shift our focus here a little bit to talk about another hurdle that school districts are certainly facing. Urban core school districts in Houston have seen a decline in student enrollment. Because funding follows the student, we know this has a great impact on district budgets. Paired with the end of federal pandemic relief funding, many school districts are looking at budget cuts and even closing schools. Houston ISD just released an efficiency study to correct areas of misaligned spending that should be allocated to instruction. What role should the legislature play in not only supporting districts financially, but ensuring funding remains focused on student learning? Representative Cunningham, I will turn to you if you are able to, or would you rather I go to Representative Dutton first?
No, I'll can you hear me? I'm just making sure
Yes.
that okay, good. Yeah, I think I got most of the question here. I think when we look at what we can do because of the decline in student enrollment, one of the things also, and I did hear earlier that Houston ISD was looking for some efficiencies. I think, and just speaking for myself, at the state level, the state is going to be probably looking at more transparency and efficiency in helping these school districts, because I've gone over the last at least 2 months. I visited with every school district in my district. I've got another meeting later on this afternoon at 1 o'clock with Crosby ISD, and all districts are facing some type of challenges, as I'll put it that way. Either with their police departments, with their benefits, just deficits. Spring ISD, 24 million. Just to name one. Aldine ISD, the same thing. And so, we're going to have to look at exactly, one, are there efficiencies throughout the district? We've got one school district already looking and discovering, why are we doing charter buses when we've got school buses? I mean, just simple as that. Because when we look at where the basic allotment is at now, and I do see it being raised, one of the things that we're going to have to do is emphasize that more than just a percentage of that money goes to teaching. We want the money to be able to say we're educating our children. not the money going elsewhere throughout the district, especially in this instance, and I'll use it. Hopefully I don't get anybody upset, but if I'm paying for charter buses, I mean, show me the education benefit for the child. So I think, going into the next session, there's going to be more accountability looked on for districts. At the same time that we're going to be looking to see what we can do to bring them up, because I know I just got there last year, but I think this issue has been happening since at least since 2019. And so haven't been able to keep up with inflation. You know, districts are suffering, teachers are suffering, and teachers are the backbone to educating our children. And they should be high on the list, even higher than the superintendent, even higher than a principal, and higher than the administrator. The teacher should always be at that top priority because they're educating, the most precious commodity that we have, and that's our children.
We certainly agree. Thank you for that. Chairman Dutton, I'll turn to you. What role should the legislature play in not only supporting districts financially, but ensuring funds remain focused on student learning?
Well, one of the things we've always taken a look at is the amount of money that budgets go to the classroom. How much of a district's budget goes to the classroom? Because we all know that if you want the classroom, and it should be the most important thing in that district, then we ought to be spending most of the money in that classroom. We ought not be doing other things. When I heard that Houston ISD, for example, had bought a significant number of buses that they didn't need, I started wondering why. Why is it sometimes viewed as some of the school board meetings, and I know school board members have a difficult challenge, and they're kind of on the front line of this, but at the same time, they have a responsibility to ensure the proper care for the taxpayers' money. And that doesn't mean allowing a district to just do whatever it wants to with the money, but at least we ought to have some safeguards. I'm not sure. We've argued back and forth as to what amount or what percentage of a district's funding ought to be in the classroom. And I hope we'll continue to do that, because we all know that districts that tend to spend the higher percentage of the money in the classroom are the districts that do well. And so we're going to be taking a look at that. We'll be trying to help districts provide the efficiencies that my colleague talked about, so that they'll be able to at least offer some greater benefit to the use of those taxpayer dollars, because at the end of the day, that's what's extremely important. I'm glad that in HISD they're taking a look at the whole system, including the administrative cost, because that certainly can't stay the same. I understand that the administrative costs for HISD were increasing significantly while the number of students was declining dramatically. I don't know how you could do that, because it seems to me that if the student decline occurs, there'd be no greater need for certain administrative challenges that we all face. So again, I think the legislature is there to help. We have done performance audits, financial audits for school districts. We'll probably continue to do that. And as we find districts that have problems, I think it's going to be imperative for the legislature to ensure that we take a real hard look at the budgets and the execution of those budgets for school districts.
So we talked earlier about our youngest learners. I'd like to really delve into some of our soon-to-be graduates. I know that we all want students to graduate with opportunities to pursue both college and direct careers. Across the region, 1 in 3 graduates are not college, career, or military ready. In January, Aldine ISD announced a partnership with Memorial Hermann Health System to offer career and technical education programming aligned with jobs in the healthcare industry. How do you see the legislature preparing to better align K through 12 education with post-secondary outcomes and encourage innovative programming? Chairman Dutton?
Well, it's one of the questions that came to me when I was chairing public ed. I talked to a number of colleges and universities in the state, and one of the things they were worried about at the highest level was the number of entering freshmen who weren't college ready. What that meant is for many of the colleges, they had to go and institute certain remedial courses that students had to pay for, that they don't get any benefit from. And the colleges had to go out and find people who could teach these courses. And the only person who had gotten away scot-free of the whole thing were the school districts that produced these children who were not up to par when it came to college entry. One of the suggestions that came to me from some of the school districts was, from the colleges and universities was, we ought to be able to send the bill for all these courses, and the students ought to get a reimbursement from the school districts that they came from. That ought to be a cost to them, not to the cost to the college and university or to the student. I think that making sure, again, that every child is reading on grade level is going to be a absolute panacea to some of these ills that we see now happening. I realize that our college, some of our college kids are not really on college level, but that starts way before high school, but way before 12th grade. That started way back, like I said, in 3rd grade. And so we've just got to do more to make sure that our children are absolutely on grade level. And sometimes we've argued about, people argue about standardized tests. I think there's a place for standardized tests. I don't think you just eliminate standardized tests simply because some people don't like them or have other reasons not to take a look at them. But I think that for all of us in the legislature, we as policymakers, we have to ensure that college and career readiness percents absolutely go up. There were some schools in my district, one in particular, my old high school. I looked at their college and career and military readiness percentage, and it was at 1%. I was absolutely amazed. That can't stay the same. We've got to do whatever we got to do. And I will join with my colleague and all the school districts to do whatever we got to do to make that improve. But I think that's got to come again from the people on the ground. They've got to come to us and say, look, how do we do this? How do we improve this? What can we do to improve this? When they had an issue about bullying in school districts, they came to us and said, legislature, do something, help us do something about bullying. Frankly, I think that school districts already could do something about bullying. They just need to stop it, or at least do whatever they can to make it least effective on their campuses. And so I look forward to working with the teacher organizations, with the teachers themselves and administrators to try to see if we can make sure this has a better outcome.
Representative Cunningham, how do you see the legislature preparing to better align K through 12 education with post-secondary outcomes and encourage innovative programming?
Well, thank you for the question. First, I want to echo everything that my colleague Chairman Dutton said. Totally agree. as we talked about the Aldine announcement, I was proud to be, I think, one of 6, I believe, elected officials that signed a letter of support in this project. And Aldine, I have part of Aldine ISD in my district. I think with what they're doing is what I would like to see all of us doing, and that is coming together, the business community coming together, working with our young kids, because not everybody, like I said, not everybody is made for college, not right then. You know, my son was a prime example. You know, he wasted all of my money for him, and then he had to pay his own way, but he made it. But I'm just saying, we need to have these businesses come together. There's air conditioning, plumbing, all of these companies here can partner with our middle schools, high schools, and find that interest in one of those students, and that way give him a pathway. And so I'm hoping that we can start doing this. It's just by partnering together. One of the other things I want to touch on too is all the pressure that's put on the teachers. We really need to look at mental health for teachers. That is something I want to look at too, because without the good teacher there, then we don't have her teaching that student, have him or her teaching that student. And so that is another angle. Every time we look at this thing, people say we need more money. I don't think we need more money. I think we need the right programs. And when we start a program, let's get rid of a program that's not working. So right now on this, to answer this here, we need more programs, we need more partners with the business community to not only prep those that are going to go to college, but prep those that aren't going to college and lead them into a career, a good high paying career. And then also those that are going to be serving in the military. So that's I know a long, short, halfway answer, but that's just it. Everybody coming together, partnerships.
Representative Cunningham, because you circled back to teachers, I'll also circle back because you didn't get the opportunity to answer. Given teacher turnover, Houston area school districts are increasingly reliant on first-year teachers. How are you thinking about strengthening the teacher preparation pipeline?
Well, okay, yeah. Right now we got first-year teachers. We've got experienced teachers that are burned out, that are leaving. And that goes back to my question the statement I just made about the mental health of our teachers. You know, this is one thing that we're going to have to really look at. But it's going to take us working with TEA, us working with SBAC to, I'm not saying water down, but work with them, because a first year teacher doesn't know. They have to have that mentorship. I'm trying to remember the policy, one of the policies we had, and I know Chairman Dutton, he'll know what it is, that deals with our teacher allotment. But putting all these things in place to help those teachers. And then we're already doing recruiting. I know when I was at Humble ISD, our folks were going to Louisiana, we were recruiting. We're going to go to Oklahoma, we're recruiting, you know. And then, of course, within our own district, we're recruiting because we're trying to see what the starting pay is going to be. So we're trying to get everybody. Competition is good. But I think as we do that and as we recruit, let's put things in place that are going to help our teachers, those that are teaching, help them and get them down the road where they can actually be the best teacher that they can be. So it's being concerned with their mental health. It's being concerned with the proper pay. As I said, they're the backbone of the education system. Without the teacher, we don't have an education system. So those would be a few things that I'll be looking at. And Chairman Dutton, he can echo this. We don't know exactly what our interim charges are going to be. I think everything probably happens after March 5th. And we'll look at, I know there's a couple of things we're looking at, but we talked about accountability, transparency. We talked about teachers paid and really dollars that are given to districts that are actually spent in the classroom on our teachers. And I'll end with that. And I will say, got a little emergency, so I'm gonna have to go. But I thank you for the opportunity to at least visit with your folks. And once again, Chairman Dutton, it was good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope it all worked out okay.
Thank you so much, Representative Cunningham, and we absolutely wish you the best. Absolutely take care. And with that, I think that that's a good place for us to start to wind down here. Thank you to both you, Chairman Dutton, and Representative Cunningham, for taking time to share your insights and experience with us. We know that solving these challenges is not an easy job, and we greatly appreciate your leadership. I mean, we've covered a number of different issues that our public schools are facing, and we know that you're working to meet student needs. On
Well,
behalf
let me
of
say thank you too. And I don't want anybody to be conceived that, and I know I speak for my colleague too, we don't have all the answers. We simply just don't. I wish we did, but for people that get elected to the legislature, we really know how to get elected. And when it comes to the questions of schools, we in large part have to rely on the people who are, the people on the front line. That's the teachers themselves. That's parents. That's students. That's the bus drivers, the custodians. Just everybody associated with the school ought to have input into the answers to the questions that we have. And so I would encourage everybody who hears this, who's involved, and I don't care whether you've got a son or a daughter in school or not, you ought to be part of the solution to what happens to other kids, even if you don't have kids in school. And so I would encourage them to get involved with good reason, first of all, and to certainly come to the legislature and let us all know not only just how you feel about it, but don't come to me because you're mad about something. Come to me because you want to help me solve the problems. Because I can tell you that we hear far too often from the other side.
Well, thank you, Chairman Dutton, for that call to action. For all of our listeners, to make sure that you're up to date on all things Houston public education, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and follow us on social media. We are at Good Reason Houston on most social channels to keep up to date and to make sure you know how to advocate for all of these education policies. On behalf of Good Reason Houston, I want to thank you all for joining us. For a deeper look at some of the data that we shared today, visit goodreasonhouston.org/blog. We recently released our analysis of data from the Texas Academic Performance Reports, covering issues like kindergarten readiness, college, career, and military readiness, chronic absenteeism, and our teacher workforce. Thank you again, Chairman Dutton. Thank you to Representative Cunningham, and wishing you the absolute best. And thank you all, and have a wonderful Wednesday.